Imagine this. You just got paid, finally. After 2 weeks of stretching every dollar, eating the same 3 meals on rotation, and praying your check engine light was lying to you, you've got money in your account. But here's the problem. You don't have a bank account. Or maybe you do, but it's been overdrawn for 6 days, and the fees have been stacking up like dirty dishes. So you take your paycheck to one of those check cashing places on the corner. You know the one. Bright yellow sign, bars on the windows, open until midnight because they know exactly when you're getting off your shift. You hand over your check for $842, and they hand you back $791. $51 gone, just like that. Not for a service that took an hour, not for financial advice, for literally cashing a piece of paper that already has your name on it. And here's what makes this so frustrating. If you drove 15 minutes to a wealthier neighborhood, walked into a bank, and had a checking account with a $200 minimum balance, that same transaction would cost you exactly $0. Nothing, free. But you can't maintain that minimum balance because you're using every dollar you make just to survive. So you pay $51 for the privilege of accessing your own money. This is what economists call the poverty premium. And once you understand how it works, you'll never look at poor neighborhoods the same way again. My name is James, and I spend way too much time thinking about why being poor is so expensive. If you're someone who's ever felt like, no matter how hard you work, the math just doesn't add up, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Because today we're going to break down exactly how the system is designed to charge you more for being broke. Now look, I know what you might be thinking. James, poor neighborhoods have lower rent. That's the whole point. You trade convenience for affordability. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But here's what most people don't realize. The sticker price is almost never the real price. Let me explain. A study from the Brookings Institution found that low-income Americans pay anywhere from 15 to 40% more for basic goods and services than their wealthier counterparts. Not luxury items, not fancy restaurants. We're talking about groceries, car insurance, banking, and even toilet paper. 15 to 40% more for the exact same products. Here's the thing. When you're poor, you don't get to optimize. You don't get to buy in bulk. You don't get to wait for sales. You don't get to drive 20 minutes to the cheaper store because gas costs money and time costs money, and your 2006 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it might not make it back. So you shop at the corner store. The one that charges $4.29 for a gallon of milk that costs $2.89 at the suburban supermarket. You're not stupid. You know it's more expensive. But what choice do you have? This is where it gets interesting. The poverty premium isn't just about individual stores charging more. It's about entire economic ecosystems that extract wealth from people who have the least to give. Let's talk about food deserts. According to the USDA, approximately 23.5 million Americans live in food deserts, areas where the nearest supermarket is more than a mile away in urban areas, or more than 10 miles in rural areas. And here's the kicker. These areas overlap almost perfectly with low-income neighborhoods. So what fills the gap? Gas stations, dollar stores, corner bodegas, convenience stores that are anything but convenient when you're trying to feed a family. A researcher at the University of Connecticut found that prices at small urban grocery stores are on average 10 to 30% higher than at supermarkets. And the selection is worse, way worse. You're choosing between white bread, or maybe some white bread. Fresh vegetables? Good luck. You might find some sad-looking bananas and a bag of apples that have seen better days. Now you might be thinking, okay, but can't people just take the bus to a real grocery store? And technically, yes. But let's do the math. Say the bus costs $2.50 each way. That's $5 round trip. Now imagine you're a single mom with 2 kids. That's $15 just in transportation. The bus takes 45 minutes each way, so you've just spent an hour and a half traveling. You can only carry what fits in your arms, and maybe a small cart, so you can't buy in bulk even if you wanted to. And you need to be back before your shift starts, or before the kids get out of school. Suddenly, that overpriced corner store starts to make a lot more sense, doesn't it? But food is just the beginning. Let me tell you about something that will genuinely make you angry. Auto insurance. If you are living in a low-income neighborhood, you pay more for car insurance, period. Even if you have a perfect driving record. Even if you've never filed a claim. Even if you drive a 2003 Toyota Corolla that's worth less than some people's monthly grocery bill. A ProPublica investigation found that major insurers charge premiums that are on average 30% higher in predominantly minority urban neighborhoods than in majority white neighborhoods with similar accident costs. 30% more for the same coverage with the same risk profile. The insurance industry calls this territorial rating. They claim it's based on accident frequency and repair costs in your area. But here's what they don't tell you. They're also factoring in credit scores, which are lower in poor neighborhoods. They're factoring in the density of uninsured drivers, which is higher in poor neighborhoods because, well, insurance is too expensive. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of financial extraction. And if you can't afford insurance at all, you drive without it. Because you need to get to work. Because there's no bus route. Because your kids need to get to school. And when you inevitably get pulled over, you get a ticket. And when you can't pay that ticket, it becomes a warrant. And suddenly, your entire financial life is in a spiral because you couldn't afford to pay a premium that was artificially inflated in the first place. Here's the thing about the poverty premium that nobody talks about. It's not just about money. It's about time. It's about stress. It's about the mental bandwidth that gets consumed by just trying to survive. There's this concept in behavioral economics called cognitive load. When your brain is occupied with financial stress, worrying about rent, worrying about bills, worrying about whether that check is going to clear, you have less mental capacity for everything else. Decision-making suffers. Long-term planning becomes almost impossible. You're not thinking about retirement accounts when you're wondering if you can afford both electricity and food this month. A study published in Science magazine found that poverty imposes a cognitive burden equivalent to losing 13 IQ points. Not because poor people are less intelligent, but because the constant stress of financial scarcity literally changes how your brain functions. And the system exploits this. It's designed to exploit this. Let me give you another example. Payday loans. The average payday loan has an annual percentage rate of around 400%. 400%. If you borrowed $500 to cover an emergency car repair, which, by the way, you need the car to get to work, so this isn't optional, you could end up paying back over $600 in just 2 weeks. Now look, I'm not here to shame anyone who's ever used a payday loan. Sometimes it's the only option. When your alternatives are borrow money at 400% interest or lose your job because you can't get there, you take the loan. That's rational decision-making given impossible circumstances. But here's what drives me crazy. There are more payday loan stores in America than there are McDonald's and Starbucks combined. Now think about that. An industry built entirely on financial desperation is more ubiquitous than fast food and coffee. And where are these stores located? Not in wealthy suburbs. Not in gated communities. They're concentrated in low-income neighborhoods, often within walking distance of public housing. They know exactly who their customers are, and they set up shop accordingly. The average payday loan borrower takes out 8 loans per year and spends over $500 just in fees. Not paying down the principal, just fees. That's $500 extracted from people who are already struggling. Let's talk about something even more fundamental. Housing. You'd think that poor neighborhoods would at least have cheaper rent, and nominally, they do. A one-bedroom apartment in a low-income area might cost $800 compared to $1,400 in a nicer neighborhood. But here's what most people don't realize about cheap housing. It's not actually cheap. When you rent a substandard apartment, you're often dealing with issues that cost you money. Poor insulation means higher heating and cooling bills. One study found that low-income households spend a higher percentage of their income on utilities than any other group, sometimes 3 times more as a share of income. Then there's the appliances. That old refrigerator your landlord refuses to replace, it's using twice as much electricity as a modern one. The windows that don't seal properly? You're literally paying to heat the outside. The water heater from 1987? It takes 20 minutes to get hot water, and you're paying for every minute. And don't even get me started on health costs. Older buildings are more likely to have mold, lead paint, pest infestations, and poor ventilation. These aren't just inconveniences, they're health hazards that lead to medical bills, missed workdays, and long-term chronic conditions. A Harvard study found that children who grow up in substandard housing have higher rates of asthma, lead poisoning, and developmental delays. The cheap apartment isn't cheap when it costs you your kid's health. Now here's where I want to challenge an assumption that a lot of people have. They think the poverty premium is about exploitation by greedy businesses. And sometimes it is. But often, it's more complicated than that. Running a small grocery store in a high-crime neighborhood is expensive. You need security. You have higher insurance costs. Shoplifting rates are higher. Employee turnover is higher. Suppliers charge more for smaller deliveries. The economics genuinely are harder. That doesn't make it fair. It doesn't mean we should accept it. But understanding the mechanics helps us see that solving this problem requires more than just shaming corner store owners for their prices. So what can actually be done? Let me give you some actionable strategies if you're currently paying the poverty premium. First, and I know this sounds obvious, but it matters, find a bank account with no minimum balance and no monthly fees. They exist. Online banks like Chime, Current, or even some credit unions offer accounts specifically designed for people who've been locked out of traditional banking. Even if you've had accounts closed in the past due to overdrafts, there are second-chance banking options. The money you save on check cashing fees alone could be hundreds of dollars per year. Second, look into grocery delivery services. I know, this sounds counterintuitive. Delivery is usually more expensive, right? But here's the math. If a service like Instacart or Walmart delivery costs $10 for delivery, and you can order from a supermarket with prices 20% lower than your corner store, you come out ahead on any order over $50. Plus, you're saving time and transportation costs. It's not perfect, but it's a tool. Third, explore community resources that most people don't know about. Many cities have community development financial institutions, or CDFIs, that offer small dollar loans at reasonable rates. Some credit unions have payday alternative loans with rates capped at 28%. Still not great, but a lot better than 400. Local nonprofits sometimes offer emergency assistance, utility assistance, and food pantries that can take pressure off your budget. Fourth, and this is important, build a buffer, even if it's tiny. I know it feels impossible when every dollar is spoken for. But even $50 set aside for emergencies can prevent you from needing that payday loan, even $25. Start with whatever you can. The goal isn't perfection, it's breaking the cycle of fee extraction. Fifth, consider cooperative buying. This is old school, but it works. If you and a neighbor or family member can split a Costco membership and go together once a month, you can access bulk pricing that's usually only available to wealthier shoppers. Some communities have formal buying cooperatives. Others are just informal arrangements between people who figured out that pooling resources makes sense. But here's what I really want you to understand. The poverty premium is a systemic problem, which means individual solutions can only go so far. You can optimize your own behavior perfectly and still be paying more than someone who happened to be born into different circumstances. The real solutions are policy solutions. Better public transportation, so people can access affordable stores. Zoning reform that makes it easier for full-service grocery stores to open in underserved areas. Banking regulations that cap predatory fees. Insurance reform that limits territorial discrimination. Investment in housing quality standards and enforcement. These aren't sexy solutions. They don't fit in a TikTok, but they're what actually moves the needle. And here's the final thing I want to leave you with. If you're watching this video and you're currently caught in the poverty premium, I need you to understand something important. It's not your fault. The system is designed this way. Not because of some grand conspiracy, but because when you optimize capitalism purely for profit extraction, The people with the least power get squeezed the hardest. You're not bad with money because you pay $51 to cash a check. You're operating rationally within an irrational system. But knowing how the system works gives you power. Every fee you avoid, every alternative you find, every dollar you keep instead of giving to some predatory lender, that's resistance. That's you taking back control in a system designed to keep you running in place. You're not going to solve generational poverty by switching bank accounts. Let's be real. But you can stop the bleeding. You can find the gaps. You can build just enough cushion to make different choices. And sometimes, that's how it starts. If this video helped you understand something you didn't before, drop a comment and tell me about your experience with the poverty premium. I read every comment, and I think these conversations matter. Hit subscribe if you want more videos that explain the financial systems most people never think about, and I'll see you in the next one.